My name is Jim Sharp, and this is my testimony on Paradigm B. I guess I'll start off by sharing what life is like now. I like my mind. That's probably my favorite part of living in Paradigm B. I had a very busy mind, and I can recognize now with the mind that I have. I was constantly working to put stories, relationships, roles, all these kind of things together and stack them on it. My mind was constantly worried about certain kinds of relationships, the dynamics of men and women, or what all the different kerfluffle that's happening in our world. And now I have a mind that wants to always find the best point of view automatically. This isn't without effort. This is without effort. And it constantly wants to be focused on ideas rather than to try to see how I fit into this world and our collective culture and that sort of thing. So that's probably my favorite part of this, is that something that I did not know was even possible was to have this very free mind, and one that wasn't wrapping itself into stories, but rather really being able to focus on ideas. And it's nice too to be in this space because things like judgment don't exist. And so where judgment comes in and kicks around relationships, this doesn't happen anymore. Meaning that if I were to hold a certain position I thought something about somebody, and when I would be in relationship with them, if I think something in the back of my mind, really a judgment, it would change the dynamics of our relationship. And since that doesn't exist, just relating can exist. And this goes down to the deepest level of just truth-telling and not having to hold on to lies, to be free in every moment, not worried about something that you said or whatever else. So those are my favorite parts, and I can probably talk about a million other things that are great about Paradigm B, but I'll talk about a little bit about my way of getting there. And I would probably put my life in kind of I was a belief clinger in a way, I would say, in that, there was a religion that I was raised in, and I thought it has to be it. I loved the guru or the avatar at the end of this particular religion. And I always thought I was going to be that, or if I found the right denomination, the right church, or whatever else. And when I finally found spirituality, I learned to uncover my unconscious. I went through a very fast stage, probably a decade or longer, of belief hopping, where I'd read one book and I'd learn about certain concepts. And then that would die out. I'd read another book and I'd be off to doing something else. And I was constantly hopping from belief to belief. And so what is amazing is just this discovery, which I didn't know existed. I thought that human beings had to either cling to beliefs, find something and stick with it, or they had to hop until they found. But you always, like in my old mind, I always felt like you had to believe in something. And when I finally found Paradigm B, this whole other way of seeing the world and a lens in which to see the world, I found that I'm unraveling beliefs. That, I even had somebody ask me, what do I believe in? And it was a hard question for me to answer. And I held on to that seat for a long time because I was like, I don't know what I believe in, because I already know. I have knowing. I don't have anxiety about, if God exists or which religion's right or these philosophies and blah, blah, blah. that doesn't exist in my world anymore. It's just a knowing. And there's a lot of peace behind that. And so that was kind of my my journey. And I did have an experience, which you could pick any kind of name for it. Awakening. I called it my remembering at one time, but then I found that humans make up different stories about what's happening, and so I don't really use languaging on there. But there was a moment where I did have an experience where I had pure freedom. I had pure freedom from needing to be the hero in my mind. And then actually, after that experience, it took me a while to really understand what the heck was going on, because this was very different. I recognized that my mind no longer really had interest in identity stuff. I didn't care about what people thought of me or even what I thought of me. And so what I came to understand, that I was actually being me. I was actually just experiencing whatever this is. I'm experiencing it in the world, instead of creating a story of what I thought I should be. And I would call that was my ego story, and defining ego, because people define ego in many different ways. But if you were to define it as that aspect of us that takes things personally, or that needs to make things personally, without that, I was just experiencing life, and I'm experiencing who I am rather than trying to figure out who I am, or creating a story, a hero story of who I think I am in relationship to everybody else. And, and it's interesting. This is another point that I thought would be interesting to share in it, was that I have studied many different spiritual teachers and philosophers and stuff that point to paradigm B. But it's interesting, because what I found was, and it's the reason that it took me so long to get out of paradigm A, was because I was always looking through the lens of paradigm A. I was making sense of what they were saying through the lens of paradigm A. And then I started to realize I don't have to do that anymore. If I hold true to the elements within paradigm B, it just comes so quickly. It's unbelievably how fast you can untangle yourself from trauma and misery and stories and relationships that are just anxiety and stress and really repulsive. And this can happen. And so it isn't that paradigm B, people have been trying to move to paradigm B, and you can see it. I mean, even you can see little nuggets of it happening within counseling when I was a psychotherapist, and philosophies that move in this direction. But it's the same thing. We get caught up in the same thing because paradigm A is so popular. It's the thing we default to. I was always trying to make sense of paradigm B through paradigm A, and when I realized, heck, you don't have to do that, because I used to have kind of a connotation with paradigm B. You've got, you live in grace, you have contentment, you have these kind of things, and the image I would have in my mind is I had to become a monk. The hair had to come off, and I had to get some spiritual looking clothing, and and then I was just going to become that, and I never felt like that was me. So how could I be this and still be spiritual and still be living in this other world? And I found that it is available. It's just not popular. It seems to be what people kind of dream about, or they see it as this gigantic goal. But what I came to find is that it's only difficult because paradigm A tells us it's difficult. That's one of the aspects of paradigm A, is to tell us that this other paradigm is a difficult thing to achieve. And I've come to find that it is not. And I watch people quickly move through problems now, using just keeping your attention on what you want. You want we want these great things like grace and contentment and flow and ease and love and kindness and joy. And all of these things are available. As long as we just, it just depends on where we put our attention.